start the day with a super cool keynote. We have here a tech writer who has been European editor at the Next Web. He has also been senior editor at TechCrunch, and now he's starting his own media outlet focused on reporting in depth and super professionally about tech businesses and startups in all around Europe. It's called Tech.eu, so check it out. So here to talk to us today about the big trends in technology and the small European companies making things actually happen in Europe is Robin Wauters. Let's give him a hand.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Congratulations for making it here this morning, especially to myself. All right, where do I point this? Oops, that's a little ahead of it. There we go. So when Bogdan asked me to talk about technology trends and what are the future trends in technology, I said no, because I hate trying to predict the future when you really can't. And then he said yeah, but it's like future tech trends for 2014, which is like 5 weeks away. So I figured, yeah, wouldn't hurt. So we're going to talk about technology trends, not all of them, just a selection that are current, and a couple of examples of European companies that are actually riding the wave. So first of all, a little bit more about myself. I was involved in a very early European blog network called Blog Nation, which I'm sure you don't remember, because it was a spectacular failure. I used to run a startup conference in Brussels called Plug. I started a social media agency called Talking Heads that merged with one of the biggest digital agencies in Belgium. I was managing editor of virtualization.com, and then went to TechCrunch, and afterwards the Next Web. And now I'm the founding editor of Tech.eu. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it at the end of the presentation. But essentially my job is to travel around Europe and talk to cool entrepreneurs and investors and other players in the ecosystem. So that's a pretty cool job, in my opinion. So it gives me a little bit of insight about what's happening in tech, but I hate predicting the future, as I mentioned. So I'm going to talk about some trends that really shouldn't be all that surprising to you, but still notable. Something that I want to stress is that trends don't necessarily equal innovation. One usually follows the other. Sometimes a trend is something that happens years after the actual innovation takes place, sometimes the other way around. So that you don't have, we shouldn't confuse both. Sometimes it's a big company setting the trends simply because they can, because they have the scale, because they have the brand, because they have the supply chain. Stuff like console gaming, smart TVs, and then tablet revolution, if you want. Those were big companies setting the trends. Sometimes it's startups. If you look, just one example, mobile messaging. You had all the players, the big ones, the IM giants, were in a perfect position to lead the space, and they didn't. There were startups like WhatsApp and Snapchat, and a bunch of other applications that most people use for mobile messaging these days. So sometimes it's the startups, sometimes it's the big companies. As I mentioned, accurately predicting the future is, in my opinion, impossible. And I actually have some friends who are literally futurists, and they go around the world talking about the future of technology. And I mean, sometimes they get it right. More often they get it wrong. I don't think you can predict what's going to happen in 5 years. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, because in the end, I like the feeling of still being amazed by technology, and I still do. Like, I can see innovation happening now that I didn't expect to happen, and it's going to keep occurring. So I like to be left in wonder. Let's talk about trends. Internet of Everything used to be called the Internet of Things, and some people still associate it with, yeah, my fridge is going to be internet connected. But it's no longer about that at all. It's something that is so pervasive that it's going to change pretty much everything. I'll let you read it. I'm not going to read it out loud. But this is Cisco's definition of the Internet of Everything, which I think is a very good one. So this is something that's going to have an impact on pretty much everything, right? Everyone read it? Hold on. So it's going to have an impact on stuff like food supply, water, bunch of other things. Some companies in Europe riding this wave, Lockade, I don't know if you know this, but it's a smart bike lock that's GPS enabled, and you don't need a key for it, so you can just turn it on and off with your smartphone. You don't actually have to take the smartphone out of your pocket. You can literally just walk away from your bike, and if the Bluetooth connection drops, then the lock kicks in. And then you can, when someone tries to break it, it alerts you, but it also alerts other Lockade users in the neighborhood, so they can take action if required. And a bunch of other cool stuff that's in there. There's an accelerometer, there's a temperature sensor, so you can't like heat it or put ice spray on it to break it. Or at least it will give you a notification when someone tries. Cube Sensors, cool Slovenian company trying to build very small sensors that you can put in your office or your living room or any room in your house that essentially monitors the air quality, the temperature, humidity, and more. Because we spend a lot of time indoors, so this kind of solution makes it possible for us to actually monitor the air quality around us. And it connects to smartphones and tablets, so you can keep track of what you need to change. And I saw a company, I think it was a Romanian one yesterday on stage, called Air++ or something, that's doing very similar things. So it's not just Cube Sensors. Tado, I guess everyone knows Nest in the US, smart heating app. Tado is kind of the European equivalent, but they actually do some stuff that Nest doesn't do, so they take a slightly different direction. But very cool, smartphone connected heating app, so you can control the temperature in your in the rooms in your house from a distance, and it automatically detects when you leave, for example, and it drops the heat, so it saves energy. Pretty cool. Intellectronics, Finland. They make this device called ISocket that you can plug in, and you can control it from a distance, so you can turn the power on and off. It has a temperature sensor and more. It's GPS enabled, GSM enabled, which is pretty cool. Second trend, kind of in the intersection of what I was talking about, Cube Sensor, for example, is also part of this trend. It's lean hardware and robotics. The barrier to entry for hardware manufacturing is very, very low now. Right? So you see a lot of entrepreneurs, even software entrepreneurs, making the transition to hardware because it's getting so easy to get into hardware and so cost efficient now that the possibilities are really endless. So the definition is using modern tools, digital fabrication, and etc., to create a new way to make things, and also to distribute things and sell things. So this is obviously a way to minimize waste and risk, so you don't have to go through years of prototyping anymore to come up with these lean devices, hardware devices. So the barrier to entry is really low. Perfect example of this innovation happening in Europe is Raspberry Pi, which I'm sure you know. It's a programmable single-board computer that's very cheap. It says 35, but I think it's an old price. It's actually 29 now or something. So that changes everything. Millions of Raspberry Pis have been sold already. Jala is another example. These are guys that were part of the MeeGo team at Nokia. Obviously, Nokia discontinued MeeGo at some point, and these guys just said, we have this cool operating system. It doesn't take that much more, anymore to build your own smartphone. So they didn't. So they're building like a modular smartphone that runs MeeGo, or at least a variation of MeeGo, called Sailfish. Geeksphone is another example. It's a very scrappy, small Spanish startup manufacturing the first Firefox OS devices, or at least the first commercial ones were from this company. And this is like a company that's like 14 people. The guy who founded it was 17 when the company was started. He's 20 now, or 21. It's pretty amazing. They launched their Kickstarter campaign about 2 days ago. This is a computer that you can make yourself for all ages. Like kids from 6 up, and adults if you want. So it's also based on Raspberry Pi. It's a computer encoding kit, so it lets kids play around with building their own computer and learning how to code in the living room. Really cool. Their Kickstarter campaign, they tried to raise 100,000 in one day, and they ended up with double, so 200,000 so far. Smart wearable technology, I don't think it's much of a surprise that this is a trend that's going to be very a lot talked about in 2014. Google Glass is one example. You have all the smartwatches coming up, but there's a lot more where that's coming from. So this is a combination of ubiquitous computing, broadband penetration, the rise of smartphones and tablets in every room for everyone, and wearable stuff, which is also part of this lean hardware trend. Examples, in Sweden you have a company called MuteWatch, who's making touchscreen-enabled wristbands. Doesn't just tell time, it also wakes you up with vibrations in the morning if you want, and you can flick your wrist to see the display, and it automatically turns off. It's very cool. Now computing, also a scrappy startup in Spain. I think like 5 people or something. And they built Stormfly, which is a USB stick with an operating system on it. So you plug it into any computer, it will reboot automatically, interrupt the boot process, and run the whole operating system just from this stick. So it's basically a PC that you can wear on your wrist. Shoesense, this is actually a company. This is a French guy who's just experimenting with stuff and looking at things from a different angle. Shoesense makes a device that you put on your shoes. It points the sensors upwards, and you can use gesture control to do mundane stuff, like instead of picking up your phone, you actually have to reach into your pocket and get your smartphone. Not with this. You just go like this, or whatever sensor, whatever gesture you set, and it will do these things for you. Memoto is another one. They just changed their name to Narrative, I noticed, right before the presentation. So it used to be called Memoto. This is basically a life logging device. You wear it, and it takes photos and videos and anything you want, and audio recording and everything, constantly. Constantly, if you want. So it's a real life logging device. That means you take pictures that you would never have the chance to take otherwise because you'd be too late. So this is constant. Another trend is connected cars. It never ceases to amaze me how little innovation has been done so far. Because the amount of time we spend in cars, and cars are inherently mobile, right? It amazes me that there's not more innovation going on. But it's starting to happen, and you'll see a lot more in the next few years. And basically, it's cars turning into these mobile, internet-connected platforms, more than just a vehicle. Lots of opportunities ahead. A couple of cool European companies making some really smart hybrids of software and hardware. High Mobility is one in Estonia. They build software and hardware platform that connects cars in close proximity with your smartphone. Another one's Cloud Your Car in Poland. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one, but it's essentially fleet management, smart fleet management. You plug it into your, I don't know what you call it in English, but the electronic connector next to the front seat. And it's GPS enabled, it's GSM enabled. It'll automatically track whether when someone turns it, takes it out. So this is a modern way of thinking about fleet management, and it's also smartphone connected. You can use it with your Android, iOS devices. Another trend, personal health monitoring. You have stuff like Fitbit. It's very, very familiar, so it's not really new. But you're going to see a lot more of that. A couple of things to say about that. Quantified Self, which I'm sure you've heard about. It's basically getting data about yourself and using it in a smart way. Not just monitoring, but actually using the data to improve your life. It's not just fitness and activity tracking, it's also genetics, like stuff like 23andMe, where you can send a sample of your DNA and get feedback about possible diseases that you can have in the future. And sleep monitors is also very, very popular. One company, there's a lot of them. Runkeeper is, I guess, the most well-known in the US. But there are European companies doing some fun stuff as well. Runtastic is one. Austrian company. And Scanadu, they're based in the US, but they're Belgian founders. And this is a device that it's not out yet. It's still going to FDA approval. But it's basically self-diagnosis. You put it here or here, and then you can, there's some basic stuff about your health that you can easily measure, like temperature, blood pressure, that kind of stuff. So you can monitor your own health. Withings is a very famous company, which a lot of people don't actually know that it's French. But they make these Wi-Fi-enabled body scales, weight scales, and a lot of other stuff like smart monitors, baby monitors. Very cool company. that's riding this trend. Gesture recognition, also not very new, but still, we've only scratched the surface of what we can do with gesture recognition and control. This is what it is. I'm not going to read it out loud, but it's basically acting on human gestures, as you know. It's like the Minority Report example that everyone always talks about. There's a lot of opportunities still left. It's not just entertainment. It's not just the Connect. It's also healthcare, education, military use. One very cool company is Ohmic Interactive. They were one of the first to build Connect-like features into an open source solution, and they were acquired by Intel last year, I think. Soft Kinetic, end-to-end gesture recognition platform. They're a middleware company, so they make solutions for other OEMs, but they also build their own cameras. And they're called time flight cameras, something. So basically gesture recognition, but in a different way than Connect works. PrimeSense, obviously rumored to be acquired by Apple soon, or maybe not. Another trend that's probably not new. Who has a 3D printer at home? Anyone? That's just one. I think we're going to see a lot more hands in the next few years. 3D printing is really, really becoming mainstream, and it's going to accelerate, for sure. So this is not just for geeks and makers anymore. It's for pretty much everyone. You can make your own jewels. You can make your own artifacts or art that you can put in your house. There's a lot of applications that we've only begun to scratch the surface. It's architecture, engineering, etc. A very cool company in Belgium that's rumored to go public soon is Materialized, which a lot of people don't know about. Very surprising to me because they make 3D printing of actual bone structure and stuff like that possible. So it uses customized, I don't know how you call it in English, but they're basically, it allows surgeons to manufacture custom parts of your body that you can insert. It's really cool. So both for brain and bone structure. And they also have a consumer platform. GrabCAD, now based in the US, but was an Estonian company when they started in Estonia. They basically let the community of 3D printer fans share models with each other and collaborate on models together. It was one of the largest communities in the world. It was started here in Europe. 3D printers, MakerBots is the most famous one, but there are a couple of other companies, small startups, that are doing very interesting stuff in building high-scale, quality 3D printers. They're very portable. One of them is Be Very Creative. It's kind of a stupid name, but the actual device is called Be. They're a Portuguese company. Another one in the Netherlands is Leapfrog, which you should check out. They're very, very affordable. Another trend is collaborative consumption, which a lot of people know under the name of sharing economy. Yeah, I couldn't find a better image for that. Sorry. So sharing economy is the whole shift from ownership to access, which most famous example is, I guess, Airbnb and some of the ride-sharing applications. But there are also a bunch of European companies doing very innovative stuff in this space. So one of them is House Trip, which is essentially kind of like Airbnb for vacation homes. So if you think of Airbnb as being able to rent out the rooms and the spaces in your house that you don't use, this is actual homes and properties that you use for vacation only maybe a few weeks a year. And it lets people, share. It's a whole community of people that share these properties. Started by a Frenchman and based in the UK. Fawn is another famous example of the whole sharing economy before there was something like the sharing economy, at least as a term. Fawn lets you share your Wi-Fi connection with others. And they do it very smartly because they used to go consumer only, so you'd have to buy the device, which is a router, the physical device, and install it. And now they work together with some of the biggest ISPs in the world that they can actually offer to their customers. So they're riding a good wave. BlaBlaCar is another example, the ride sharing in France, started in France. Another one's carpooling in Germany. They have massive communities, so I don't know if anyone carpools here, but it's going to be more of a trend in 2014 than before. Another one, actually last one, is digitization of finance. It's not just about mobile payments. It's about pretty much everything. It's your banking, your accountancy, your expense management, currency exchange. Like cars, it amazes me that we haven't progressed even more by now. It's almost 2014, and we still have to use a lot of physical stuff. And online banking, for example, is still a disaster, in my opinion. So with the pervasiveness of these smart connected devices, broadband penetration, it allows merchants to actually start thinking about this on a very, very affordable and rapid deployment. So these are all things that are going to impact everyone, not just us as consumers, but also the merchants. One of the companies in this space is SumUp, so which is, I guess, kind of like Square, but the realities in Europe are a lot different than in the US, which is one of the reasons that Square isn't available in Europe and probably won't be for quite a while. So there are companies like SumUp doing very innovative stuff, letting merchants take payments with smartphones and tablets. Another one's iZettle. There's another one called Pay11 in Germany, so you see a lot of these. PayPal is also doing interesting stuff. PayMill is another one. It's kind of like Stripe, where you can basically take digital payments for anything on the web. It's very, very, very easy to implement and very affordable. Another example in Estonia, now based in the UK, is TransferWise, which, if you think about it, the whole process of transferring money in one currency to the next is incredibly expensive for no good reason. And they're changing all that by using mid-market fees and no additional fees. So it changes everything. And obviously, there's still a lot of international payments going on, both between businesses and consumers. So this is a very interesting company to watch. So that's a bit of a list of trends that I think is going to really accelerate. They're not new, but they're going to accelerate next year. And what I wanted to tell you now is that I'm actually building a new digital publication, as we mentioned earlier. It's called Tech.eu. I was hoping to launch it today, but instead it's going to be next week, because we need some more time. But basically what we want to do is tell more stories about the innovation that's happening in Europe. I hope you realize by giving this presentation that I'm a big champion of what's happening in Europe on a technological level. I think there's a lot of innovation going on, and a lot of stuff that's not being covered, or at least not properly. There's innovation going on all over Europe, as you could tell from the examples that I used. And a lot of these stories aren't being told, so we're going to try and change that and build a platform. So we have a good team. I don't know if you know any of these people, but it's myself, it's Alex Barrera, it's Ivo Spiegel, it's John Bradford, who runs Techstars in London, Roxanne and Adrian. There you go. So you can sign up now. It's just a landing page for now, but you can sign up with your email address, and we'll notify you when we launch next week. And this is how you can get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was very cool. I found out about some startups and some companies I had no idea existed, and we can't wait to read about it on Tech.eu.
Yeah, me too. I found out about some companies that I didn't know before.
So how about taking some questions now? Who wants? Well, here we have the first one.
So hi, Robin,
Hi.
Dan. So we know us. So I have a question. You must have mentioned Webinos. So tomorrow the foundation will start, so 22, and Webinos make connection between all the stuff that you present here.
Okay.
So it's an industry standard, and I think you must take care about.
Okay.
So just information for you. So
Okay.
Webinos.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question.
All right. Thanks. Anyone else? We have one over there.
Hi, Emanuele, President at Babele. I
Hello.
was wondering, is social business, in your opinion, a new trend?
Social business, you mean social entrepreneurship?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a trend pretty much everywhere. You see a lot of, what I like about the actual trend is not that there's a lot of social business and social entrepreneurs. I think the trend is that they're organizing themselves and their associations, forming an actual physical co-working spaces for social entrepreneurs. So you're going to see a lot more of that for sure. And that's everywhere. It's a global trend. It's not just European. Definitely.
Thanks. Any other questions? My colleague
She's
is
coming.
Hey Robin, Dan Radesh from Avangate.
Morning.
Do you think we are in a tech bubble in Europe or in US or globally?
No.
So everything is just fine, we won't have another bubble?
Is everything just fine? I don't know if everything's fine, but I don't see a technology bubble at all. I see some bubbles, but they're mostly bubbles based around companies or groups of companies. I don't see a wider trend in bubbles at all. I mean, valuations are what they are.
Quite high.
Sorry? Quite high.
Yeah.
Quite high, but it's just market dynamics. I don't think, you know, Snapchat getting valued at $4 billion is going to change anything about the rest of technology companies, whether they make it or not. It doesn't make a difference for the rest of them.
Yeah.
I mean, the business models are much more solid than they were when the first dot-com bubble occurred. You know, the audience for technology or consumer space is much, much larger. People are spending a lot more money online. So no, there's no bubble.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's an interesting question.
Other questions?
Hi.
I'm
There you are.
George from How to Web.
Hi, George.
I had a question. With all of these tech things, do you think it's widespread for all ages, or does it come with the new generations?
No, it's for all ages. And if you look at I mentioned the Kano, the computer and coding kit. I mentioned it was for kids, but it's not just for kids. Anyone can use it. I would use it. Maybe your grandparents would use it. So yeah, it's just for all ages, for sure. Especially if you look at one of the trends that I talked about was the whole mobile payment thing. People think that it's only young people, but it's actually, if you look at the merchants and the actual consumer demographic, it's more like 45, 48 years old and up. They're actually using this. Well, it's the fastest growing segment. It's not just them using it, obviously, but fastest growing.
Very cool. Any other questions?
Yeah.
We have time for 2 or 3 more. So.
Hello, Robin. Ciprian here.
Morning.
One question for startups in Eastern Europe. What would you recommend to them to do in order to get more promotion, press awareness, and coverage that would help them?
So that's usually the presentation I give at conferences. This was the first time I did anything like this. What they usually talk about is how startups should have to deal with media to get more exposure and visibility. One way of getting our attention is actually trying to get our attention. Surprisingly, it takes a while for companies in Eastern Europe to start reaching out. Usually they're like 2-3 years in before they start reaching out. They're not always comfortable in English, etc. What I usually tell them is just fuck it. Just contact us from day one, even before your launch. Just tell us about what you're building and we'll take a look. I mean, it's all about, if you build something cool, we'll notice. If you build something amazing, then we'll notice, even if you don't want to be noticed. So. Yeah, but you should reach out more. We don't hear enough about what's going on here, for sure. So reach out.
Cool. One more question. We have it over there.
Hi, Thorin Buga from Web Valley.
Morning.
I'd like to know your opinion about which technology you think will be the most disruptive. Which one will change the people's behavior the most in the near future?
Right. I think all of them combined. It's very hard to pick one because it's so interconnected. I remember when people used to say, like, mobile is going to be the next big thing, and there's going to be a tipping point, and then everything's going to go mobile. And there wasn't really a tipping point. It just suddenly, gradually happened. And I think with all of these, it's going to be the same way. Lean hardware, for example, the second trend that I mentioned. You don't see yourself making any devices yet, but And with 3D printing, it's the same. It's only 1 or 2 persons in the room that have a 3D printer at home. You know, you think about it, you think it's going to be a niche thing, and it's not going to be for everyone. But the same thing was said about smartphones. The same thing was said about tablets. So it's going to come gradually, but it's interconnection of all of these. There's not one technology that's going to disrupt everything. It's going to be all of them combined.
Thanks. Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
Bye. Thank you.